Hello, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Simon Phillips from Blue Communications. It's a real pleasure to have you joining us today for what I'm sure is going to be a really interesting discussion, hosted by Oman Oil Marketing Company. The topic that we're looking at today and the concept that we'd like to explore with our panel is the total cost of bunkering. I think we all know that price and fuel quality are of real importance, probably paramount importance when it comes to any bunker purchasing decision. But in the context of what's clearly a very dynamic and a disrupted operating environment for ship owners, these are far from being the only factors that should be considered by an owner when it comes to what impacts on their operational costs and ultimately what impacts on the total cost of their bunkering decisions. I think from a regional perspective, with our friends at OOMCO, this debate has been brought into real focus by the launch of bunkering operations at OOMCO's new marine fuels terminal at Duqm. I think we can all recognise this is a really significant step, not just in terms of bunkering options that are available within the region for ship owners now, but in terms of Duqm's potential and the growth opportunities that are there. I think over the next 30 minutes or so, we're looking forward to learning a bit more about OOMCO's operations and capabilities at Duqm, as well as ambitions for the future, but also how this brings to life the total cost of bunkering debate and the questions that all ship owners really should be asking themselves when they are considering their marine fuels purchasing strategies. I'm really pleased to introduce our panel for this discussion. We're joined by Mr. Ali Ahmed Mukbail, General Manager for International Retail for OOMCO. Also by Christoph Elkati, Head of Marine and Bunkers at OOMCO. And finally by Mr. Adrian Tolson, Director and Lead for Blue Insight, Blue Communications. And I'm sure many of you will know Adrian as a leading expert on the global marine fuel sector. Gentlemen, we're all looking forward to hearing your views over the next 30 minutes or so. For our audience, thank you very much for joining us. We're really interested in hearing any questions that you have as well. There's a Q&A section you should have on the web browser. Please use that to submit any questions that you would like to put to our panel. And time permitting, I hope we will be able to take some of those questions towards the end of the session. I think before we get into the detail of talking more generally about the total cost of bunkering as a concept, let's start by focusing on the launch of OOMCO's terminal at Duqm. I hope as many of you will have seen, bunker operations got underway last week in Duqm, and this is something that's the culmination of a really considerable amount of planning and investment by OOMCO in the facilities and the capabilities that are now at Duqm. And perhaps if I can open by directing the first question to you, Ali. Congratulations on the start of operations at Duqm. You've spoken in the past of the Duqm difference, as it's been put, and the factors that you think will make Duqm an attractive location. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you think those factors are?
Well, thanks, Simon and the rest of you guys at Blue Communication, actually, and thank you for congratulating me on the commencement of our project in Duqm. And I'm very happy to be here today and talk about this exciting project. And to answer your question, I think the story of the Duqm is much bigger story than our bunker terminal. Like the rest of the oil-producing countries on the Gulf Peninsula, or Arabian Peninsula, Oman is an oil-producing country, and for the longest period of time, oil have been the main source of its economy. So, in its effort to diversify, the government have identified few strategic pillars: logistic services, manufacturing, and tourism are some of those pillars. And to achieve and realize this, Duqm is the cornerstone in that strategy. Like any strategy, you try to obviously monetize from your strategic differentiation factors. And Oman being a country with 3,000 kilometer long coastal line and positioned very nicely open to the Indian Ocean, that gives it a unique strategic location, along with its other natural beauty, which is make it also a good destination for for tourism. Also, Oman is an oil and gas producer, and also a lot of manufacturers would love to use the resources, those natural resources, with a very modern infrastructure to make it as an export hub. So, few 2 decades ago, the government decided to invest in this free zone in Duqm. Year to date, the government has, or the amount of investment between government and private investor have exceeded $25 billion. Obviously, some of the flagship projects in the Duqm are the Duqm port, the Oman dry dock, and Duqm refinery, and also Ras Markaz, which is a strategic reserve storage tank farm north of Duqm. To that end, obviously, the government is continuing its effort. Very recently, there have been discussion with Saudi, SABIC, and Aramco to develop the petrochemical complex. There is also a Chinese manufacturing park and several mining and cement factories that is already on the ground. So, what does that mean for us? And as for the banker business, Duqm presents is a very it answered the unique question of, or the difficult formula of having the supply and demand basically in one place. From the supply side, obviously having a refinery next door, that is always an enabler, especially with the world obviously transitioning from heavy fuel oil and more toward marine gas oil and cleaner sources of energy. And because of all these activities, definitely we expect the number of ship calls also to grow uh, rapidly over the next few years. Um, the other factors I just wanted to talk about macro level factors why would Duqm make sense for many of the ships to come and for anybody, for us also where we want to provide a service. We look at the service as also an enabler for the rest of the other activities, but I'm sure Christoph and Amr can answer more in details. Okay, nice and well. We understand how does it fit. We understand that there's a lot of money has been put there and will be put there. At the end of the day, the seminar is about cost. So what? And I think I leave that to the guys to comment more on detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. It's fascinating to hear it put in the sort of the broader context of what's taking place nationally, but also within Duqm and the longer term opportunities that are clearly there as well. And perhaps that's something we'll return to a little later in the conversation. Christoph, I turn to you and just on the back of these comments there. When it comes to the, from your perspective as someone who with your background in the marine fuel sector, how important is it to have a broader offer for a bunker report beyond perhaps just the headline factors that might attract an?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this opportunity and to highlight the advantage in bunkering the business in Duqm. The cost factor, it's a big element for the ship owner whenever are fixing the vessel. The advantage we have in Duqm that we are strategically positioned, which will benefit the ships for long deviations to get bunkers from other regions. So we are on the way for all majority of ships east-west or west-east, and this is very big advantage for us to get this bunker at anchorage. Also, it will make economy of 3 days sailing to neighborhood area for the next bunker door. More than that, we are in very quiet and safe area where the WRP is not it's not applicable, which is represents also very high cost to ship owners. And of course, our strategy of supply chain, which make us very good advantage with our alliances, international alliances, to get the fuel in Duqm. So we are really in position to offer very economic solutions to the ship owners. Duqm port, it's a new port, but it's offering a lot of facilities also. So all the facilities that are required by ship owners are almost available at Port of Duqm. So I think our position it's very I call our port the jewelry port, because really it's very advantageous for all the ship owners there.
Christophe, thank you. That's fascinating. I think it'd be great to get Adrian's perspective. Adrian, what's your take on the impact that you think Duqm could have, or its significance to see the commencement of bunkering operations there in the context of the region, or in the context of some of the factors that Ali and Christophe have raised?
Yeah, no, I mean, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. It's, I think they're all very good points. I think the key issue is that this region has needed alternative supply locations and needs alternative supply locations. As we all know, it's dominated by one supply location, and so from a ship owner's point of view, that becomes extremely important. And in terms of their bunkering options, and I think that setting up Duqm as a supply opportunity will attract a broad section of ship owners that those traversing the Indian Ocean, those moving into the AG, etc. There is a real value there. I think talking about the total cost of bunkering, I mean, this is clearly an issue. It's something that the industry has sort of neglected. Everybody when people plan bunkering locations on voyages, they tend to look at different solutions. Where can I bunker this ship, and where can I buy fuel? But it isn't necessarily until recently it hasn't perhaps received the attention it should have done. And I reflect that we're seeing a whole significant change going on a global level. When we talk about digitalization of our shipping industry, we're now talking about digitalization of the bunker purchasing component. We see some companies out there talking about optimization. And so effectively what we're telling to people is Duqm does allow you to optimize your bunker purchasing. It allows you to take in factors that you would consider in a digital program, such as obviously the distance to the next bunkering port, evaluate time lost, evaluate fuel consumed, etc., and create a proper optimization model of your voyage using digital tools, and you will find that a location like Duqm suddenly starts to make sense. I think the other part of it, just as a general comment while I'm talking, and usually I love to talk, but as a general comment, is that regionality of Duqm is very important in the sense that we have a significant need for an alternative supply location. We also have an area that is very well supplied right now with marine fuels. It's well known that the AG particularly has become a center of production for low sulfur fuels, and there's considerable availability in the market. We see that in terms of the volumes going up in the AG. So the opportunity for an alternative supply location in the region that can take advantage of those supply locations, as well as the natural flow of product from the Mediterranean through Suez into this area, is also very important as well. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, Simon, but there you go.
Quite all right. We like that, Adrian. That's good. And just to follow up for you on this, you talk about the ability to capture and calculate that total cost with some of the tools that are coming to the market these days, and some of the more advanced digital solutions and platforms that are available to owners. Is this something that ultimately means that an owner can put a dollar and cent value to that total cost of port A versus port B, or supplier A versus supplier B, beyond just the the fuel bill that they'll end up settling.
Yeah, of course, it's not just the total. I mean, time is money in shipping, that's for sure. And although nowadays some of the ships operating in the region, maybe if their tankers are not quite as expensive as they were, they will eventually, tankers will be of a higher value than and than they have been. So, for sure, there is an overall. I guess you would look at it as an overall dollar per ton calculation, or your energy cost, and it's not just. And as I said before, it includes not just time on the vessel, but the full optimization models now include weather route planning and various other sophisticated things. But this also, the digitalization platforms also become very, very important, obviously, when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, minimizing greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a combination there of minimizing the amount of fuel you use and minimizing the amount of emissions you use. So it also makes Duqm very interesting as a bunkering location, where the deviation is limited, where the amount of fuel you consume to get to it is less than it might be otherwise. So there's a number of different components working in that model, but all will, I think, see a supply location in this region increase in attractiveness, so to speak.
Thank you, Adrian. We've had a question come in from Neil Lamerton that I think is probably well timed to take this one, since it speaks particularly to some of those the regional options that are facing owners, and it's a question about pricing. And it would be naive not to recognise that still remains a central consideration. Of course, the question is that the location of Duqm is very good for bunkering, but how will the price of bunkers compare against Fujairah? Christoph, is that something that you'd like to? You're muted, Christoph.
Sorry.
That's okay. We've got you now.
Okay. I said it's very open question and the open sense for the customers or for the ship owners to compare directly with Fujairah or with Singapore. Of course, we'll never, never know, but will not be always at the price of Fujairah or sometimes at the price of Fujairah, because we are giving more services. I mean, we are shortening the time. We are making travel time short for the ship owner. And this, it's a premium. We are saving time on the supply, because our operation is able to supply on arrival, and this is a premium. We are having very excellent setup and operation with the terminal in the port, products available, and the barge available, which is save time for the ship owner. So this is also a premium. Instead of another port where there is 1,300 call per month, there is congestion. We are offering to depress this congestion from this port and to give the service for prompt deliveries to the customers, and the prompt is a premium. So that's why we have a premium, of course, but it's not unmeasured premium. We have, which is affordable, same, let's say, level at Jabal Ali, if we can nominate some port, where there is no one to supply bunker. So this is our, as for the cost price for our premium in Duqm.
Thanks, Christoph. That's really helpful. Thank you for that explanation. I guess just thinking a little bit more about the wider aspirations for Duqm, and this is perhaps a question that Ali, you'd be well placed to. I'd be interested in your views on this. There was an article, I think, published a year ago that described Duqm as being the #1 port in the world to watch, and that suggests a level of ambition for Duqm's growth, not just from a marine fuels perspective, but for the wider selection of ship services that are available. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about where you think the aspirations and the ambitions lie for Duqm as a hub, as a real hub for shipping services, including bunkering.
Yeah, I think Simon. A lot of people obviously talk about Duqm, and when I also try to sometime meet with people from all over the world, I always get the impression that the understanding that Duqm still is an idea, and it's a very ambitious and out there. But what a lot of people are missing, that as I would refer to the figure that I mentioned earlier, that tens of billions of dollars that has been invested in Duqm, and there are obviously there is mega projects that are already operational in Duqm, and whether it's the port or the dry dock or the refinery or the petrochemical plant or the other manufacturing park that I'm talking about. So we tend to believe that it's already happening, and the port is already invested in a container terminal as well, to make it also a transshipment hub as well, and there is a lot of traction also on that front as well. There is also a food manufacturing cluster and fishing port near to the port of Duqm, also to make it a food hub. So and obviously the region around Duqm is very rich with limestones and some minerals, and we understand that is also very important. A gas pipeline and a crude oil pipeline has been built, and it's already in Duqm, so that will be also. And Oman is in energy language, Oman is, at least in the in the medium term, is very long in gas, and the government will need to do something with that gas, whether to produce petrochemicals or to basically use it as fuel for manufacturing. And very recently, our mother company, OOMCO, have announced that they will be invested in one of the biggest green hydrogen projects in Duqm as well. So there is that sense as well of making providing clean energy in Duqm, and all of that we expect will attract a lot of attractions in many fields and many sectors. So Duqm is real. So it is not a master plan, or that's the message that I want to see. And I have in my position as a business development manager, I have been developing these projects along with my colleagues, and I can see the growth that in number of ship calls and in number of bunker volume in general, and even though before the service is being available, and I think the future is really bright. Beside all of that, I mean, there is a lot of interest also from friendly forces, also to use Duqm as a destination. Being it now, we all understand from geopolitics, strategic perspective, the Indian Ocean is very important for many people, and with the world somehow tilted toward the east, that makes it more interesting. So we're seeing a lot of interest from many parties, and with all of that, I think we expect it to be having a very good run, inshallah.
No, thank you, Ali. That's really helpful to set the record straight, that it isn't just about ambition; it's about what's on the ground happening today. Really interesting to hear about some of the elements that steer into the green energy opportunities as well, and I think that would be an interesting topic to probably more beyond what we have time to discuss today, but an interesting one to return to in the future, perhaps. Just a follow-up question for you, if we may, a question from one of our audience members, which is about the wider infrastructure in Duqm, and the question is how the development, how the development of rail and express roads in Duqm is part of the synergies for Duqm Port, and I guess the wider transport, land transport connections are an important part of it becoming the hub for multiple sectors, exactly as you've described.
think there was a very ambitious plans. This is obviously prior to the oil crisis, if you would like to call it oil crisis, that is mid 2014. The whole GCC countries were supposed to be connected via a network of railways. And the number that I recall that you could save up to 2 weeks for ship, to reach to the kingdom of Saudi Arabia kingdom. I mean, obviously Riyadh and the eastern province, and you don't have to get inside the Strait of Hormuz if that kind of railway is there. Now, of course, there is economical, political factors when we talk about that. But one thing is, yesterday was the end of the GCC summit, and it was one of the most warm summit that we have seen on the last maybe 5-6 years, with a lot of this dispute that's been resolved, and the whole region also, even at a global level. I mean, there is also U.S.-Iranian talks and European talks. So I believe the region is about to start a very prosperous period, and there is still talk now about bringing that project back, the Gulf Railway network. But right now it's not there. But I think, as far as Duqm, the government has full commitment to continue further. Even during the crisis, the government did not stop or slow any of the projects. And as I was telling you, these projects are up and running and they are real. We expect the refinery to be operational the first quarter of 2023. So that is the latest estimate. It could be even earlier than that. The Ras Marquez obviously is there. It's a mega tank farm for strategic reserves. And the Saudis have visited Duqm, and they have a lot of interest also. And there is a talk about connecting a pipeline from Saudi Arabia to the Duqm, also to be outside of the Strait of Hormuz, which is, again, one of the advantages of Duqm is being outside of the Strait of Hormuz, is obviously outside of the danger zone. That can mean also, some savings for a lot of the ship owners, because the insurance premium that you end up paying if getting inside. So I'm very hopeful. I think things looks bright, and hopefully we see this the railway or the network of railway happening, inshallah, soon.
Thank you, Ali. It's a good reminder that I think we think about shipping a lot, and sometimes need to think about transportation and the total cost of transportation, including some of the other options that are available from a logistics point of view. You mentioned there some of those extra costs that we need to think about when it comes to not just the fuel bill, but as we've said, the total cost of bunkering. And Adrian, I'd be interested in your views on this. Christoph, also mentioned war risk premium as as something that might not readily be considered, but should be a factor if you're having to divert through higher risk waters. I suppose when it comes to all the factors that make up that total cost of bunkering, some are enduring and always ever present, and others will fluctuate depending on what's going on in the world. And one thing that's certainly going on in the world at the moment is problems of congestion and berth availability and queuing for longer than anticipated, and the cost that brings with it. And something that is true not just in the region but globally as well. I'd be interested in your views, Adrian, on when it comes to the problems of port congestion at the moment, how that plays into the considerations about the total cost that the owner needs to try and calculate.
Well, obviously, we've seen pictures and sort of video of massive congestion at container ports, and that's obviously not really something we'll see. I mean, Duqm is not in that position necessarily, but I think it's very important to understand that being, if you're a ship owner and you want to bunker, it's all about turning a ship around as fast as possible. Even paying a premium sometimes to do that, just because that means the ship is ready to move on and move to another, it's to pick up a cargo, discharge a cargo. So that that's a very important element of any decision that on purchasing decision. And I think obviously if a locations supply ports, different locations become very, very congested, and where you now have to wait 24, 36 hours to get fuel, or if there's weather issues or weather restrictions in certain supply locations, as it can be at certain times, and not to mention the obvious, as Ali mentioned, the obvious, war risk premiums and potential for disruptions of that type, and in the sense of war risk driven premiums are driven by concerns over the safety for the vessel, and obviously not just a financial issue necessarily, but also a safety issue. So that plays in the hands of an alternative location, right? And that provides Duqm that opportunity to be that alternative location, and and then
I think
Adrian,
Adrian,
yeah.
guys evaluating the situation.
Thank you, Adrian.
Simon, if you allow me,
please.
I also I understand that today we obviously shed a lot of lights on the Duqm, but it's important also, and I'm wearing my strategy hat and business development hat, and it's to say that the concept of Duqm is also a concept of milk and run. So we don't intend just to serve the port of Duqm via our terminal in Duqm, but obviously we should be able now, with our barge being available, serve our customers, which is also, again, we have MAF, which is basically until now it's all the oil carriers and VLCCs port get their loads from, and sometimes even from Muscat port and Sahara port as well. We're supposed to be within a proximity of Duqm, and with having the barge, I think that also would be a very good service to know to propose for our clients and the ship owners. So I don't want Duqm to take all the glory and forget about the other ports as well. Thanks.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for that. It's a good reminder, and the whole being greater than the sum of the parts in terms of what Oman is able to offer across the ports that you serve. Christoph, I'd just like to turn to you, and we've spoken about all the factors that an owner should be considering, and we think it's beneficial for them to consider when they make their purchasing decisions. I'm interested in your experience of how easy or difficult it is to sometimes persuade an owner to actually take those decisions. Is the real world for an owner when making a decision about where to bunker one that allows them to consider, and to put into consideration all the factors that we've considered, or do you have to work quite hard to make them aware of all the issues that they should be considering?
Sorry, I said we have now the experience of 1 week, and we have done already some steps, and the ship owners, they had to decide on their stem, and as per this decision, they take all the parameters, regional ones, and at the end they decide to take it in Duqm. So we have very good advantage. We have premium advantage in Duqm for the supply on arrival. We have a very good advantage on the quality of our fuel, which is top premium quality, and we have also very good advantage, which is our price compared with other locations. So the decision, it's not so hard to take it. And even yesterday, we had a fixer which the vessel deviate to come to us. And I'm happy that tonight we'll be supplying it. So for the decision to bunker in Duqm, I think it's not so hard to think about it. Of course, there are the logics of going to the major ports, the hubs, but in the same time, depend on how fast the ship wants to run, when it's their next laycan, when is their next port, and it's easy to take the decision.
That's great. And these are questions and discussions that I would think owners would be having for all of their, globally. This clearly isn't just a regional issue. It's a question for their ships wherever they may be in the world, and the multiple options that they have available to them.
Simon, if I may also add to what Christoph mentioned, and obviously Adrian can chip in. I'm not pretending to be an expert, but I think in this industry, trust is very important. A lot of these ship owners make these very, very expensive decisions, and they expect to get the right product, the right quantity, and the right quality as well. And it's important that we tell the world that we are a publicly listed government company. So we hold ourselves to a very high standard of operation, whether it is from health and safety and environment to quality, also customer management as well. So that, I think, we believe it's something that if I am a ship owner, I would really have that and have that consideration in mind.
Adrian, would you agree with that? Does the reputation and whether or not that trust and that confidence in the quality of what you're being promised and the quantity that you're being promised still make a big difference?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, right now we're dealing with a lot of initiatives on transparency, in terms of quantity delivery. Some of this has been brought about obviously by OOMCO 2020 and then by greenhouse gas discussions, etc. But there is clearly a push in the bunker industry to make sure that ship owners get what they pay for in terms of quantities and quality for that matter, but certainly in terms of quantities. And you will read about that in the bunkering and shipping media quite consistently nowadays. And I think so an operation that is is trustworthy, that delivers what it says it's going to delivers a high quality of service, delivers the volume of fuel that's going to be delivered, is going to be valued more highly. So it's that's sort of another hidden cost to that total cost of bunkering, right? There's the actual, if for example you're losing 1 or 2% of the volume, that's a significant amount of money in today's world. That's $12 a ton difference in pricing. So it's something that makes a trustworthy operation such as the Duqm operation all the more important and all the more valuable to the buyer.
Thanks, Adrian. I'm conscious of our time, and we're approaching the end of the time slot that we had allocated. I'd like to give any of our panelists the opportunity to add a sort of final comment if there's anything they'd like to say just to sum up the discussion. I think it's been really fascinating to sort of try and bring together the two themes we've touched upon. Christoph, I'll come to you in just a moment. It'd be great to get your thoughts on how we draw this together. I think the launch of operations at Duqm, which is really exciting, and exploring what we mean by the total cost of bunkering. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how OOMCO can support its customers in managing those costs in the way that's right for them, and see how things develop. Christoph, final thought from you.
And at the end, I would like to invite the customers, the ship owners, to try and to test, and they will see exactly how operation is done and how the product is. For your information, also we have the license in the supplying all Omani ports, Port Sultan Qaboos and also Sohar. And we are working, as Ali said earlier, not only for Duqm, but for good quantities, we'll be able also to move the barge and to supply the tankers or the bulk carriers for good quantities in other ports. Our aim is to make the bunker supply available in all Omani coasts in the future. This is our aim. And as for the project development of Duqm, this will give a lot of synergy and economical development to the other ports. And we will make available bunkering in all Omani ports. And also in our path of growth, we have also in line the green energy supply. As you know, there are, in Oman, there is availability of LNG, there is availability of methanol, and there are new agreements on building facilities of ammonia bunkering, ammonia product. So in OOMCO, we think green also, we think future, and we think also in decarbonizing the bunkering system. And this is only the start. The future, it's more bright.
I think that's a fantastic note to end on, Christophe. The really exciting vision for where operations could go at Duqm. And yeah, we're certainly going to be looking forward to following that conversation, and perhaps particularly around that issue of decarbonisation and greener fuel options would be an interesting one for us to return to, amongst many other topics, and discuss another time. We'll bring things to a close there. Ali, Christophe, Adrian, thank you very much for your contributions. I think it's been a really interesting discussion, a lot of food for thought, and certainly more that we can return to in the future, whether that's on another webinar or whether indeed hopefully face to face when the situation permits it, and life has a little bit more normality to it. Thank you very much. Thank you also to our audience who took time out of your day to join us. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to join this conversation. I'm sure we'll be able to follow up with anyone whose questions we weren't able to get to, unfortunately. If anyone has any further follow-up questions or would like to have a conversation with Christophe about OOMCO's offering at Duqm, then I know we'd be very happy to have those conversations. So we will share. Thank you very much. Stay safe and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.